So this is lesson 10.1 in intermediate algebra. Let's make it an A. I'm sure there'll be more than one video here. And this lesson is called Completing the Square. Alright, so a couple of the things, we're going to do some factoring before we start with completing the square. So let's look at example 1 where it gives us 2x minus 3. I got a new pen. We'll see if it works better. Equals 25. Now if you remember, what you do when you have an exponent of a 2 like that is you take the square root of both sides, and that gets rid of the 2 up there. So we do this, and we do that. And we end up getting 2x minus 3, because the square root sign comes off and the exponent comes off, equals, when we do that, when we take the square root of that like that, we get plus or minus 5, don't we? Because negative 5 times negative 5 is a positive 25, and 5 times 5 is positive 25. So we get two different answers. And that's, if you remember, that's what that plus or minus means. It means that 2x minus 3 equals positive 5, or 2x minus 3 equals a negative 5. So there's really two answers we get. Alright, so let's go ahead and finish this up. 2x, going to add 3 to both sides. 3 plus or minus 5, that doesn't change. It's still plus 5 or minus 5. Then we're going to divide by 2. So x equals 3 plus or minus 5 over 2. So what do you do with that? Well, you split it up. We're going to write that as x equals 3 plus 5 over 2. And we're going to look at the minus sign. 3 minus 5 over 2. So here it equals 8 over 2, which is 4. And here it equals negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1. So we get two answers here. We get a negative 1 and we get a 4 for our answer. Alright, so let's look at example 2, and we'll keep moving along on doing factoring. Factoring is such a huge part in math that it's good for you to practice this over and over and over. I know it's good for me. It makes me feel so good. Equals negative 12. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take the square root of both sides. Okay, so we end up getting 3x minus 1 equals the square root of negative 12. Now, when we take the square root of both sides, this becomes a plus or minus. Alright, so now we have the square root, or plus or minus square root of negative 12. Now remember, when you have a negative under the radical, you pull it out as an I, and then it just becomes a 12. Now 12 can be simplified. 12 can be simplified to 2 times 2 times 3. And then remember, we have an index of 2. How many times does 2 go into 2? 1 time. So that 2 comes out. There is no exponent on the 3, so the 3 stays in there. So that square root of 12 turns into plus or minus I times 2 square root of 3. Now we're just going to switch these around because they're multiplied. I can do that. It just looks prettier. 2I square root of 3. Alright, so there we go. Let's go to the next step here. We're going to add 2 to both sides. Or 1 to both sides. God, what am I thinking? Plus or minus 2I square root of 3. Okay, now we're going to divide by 3, divide by 3, those cancel, and we're done. Okay, and really we have two answers, 1 plus 2I square root of 3 over 3, and 1 minus 2I square root of 3 over 3. So those are our two answers, one with a plus and one with a minus. So let's look at example 3. We have x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 12. Man, I like this new pen. It's awesome. Alright, we're going to break this down into two binomials. So x and x, two numbers multiplied together give me 3, added give me 6. Alright, then I can write this as x plus 3, the quantity squared, since there's two of them, equals 12. Then I can take the square root of both sides, and that becomes plus or minus. Don't forget to do that. And we have x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 12. Now in the last one we already found out that the simplification of the square root of 12 is 2 square root of 3. And then we subtract 3, and we have x equals negative 3 plus or minus 2 square root of 3. And there is our answer. Two answers. We get x equals negative 3 plus 2 square root of 3, negative 3 minus 2 square root of 3. So those are our two answers. Alright, so what we just did up here, notice up here we were given a trinomial, and we found two numbers multiplied together give me 9, added up give me 6, and that became my factors. So that's an easy way to simplify. If we had something like x squared plus 12x plus 36. Same thing. X, two numbers multiplied give me 36, added give me 12. So go ahead and simplify that way. Sometimes, though, you're going to be given an equation, and that equation will look a little bit like this. X squared plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. So remember what we did before. 2 parentheses, an x there, an x there. Two numbers multiplied together that give me a negative 2, added give me 5. There's your problem. There aren't any integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives that are simple and easy in order to get an answer like that. So there are some times when factoring like that doesn't work. That's where we come up with what is called completing the square. Alright, so there's steps here in order to complete the square, and you just have to memorize the steps. It's not real difficult, it's just memorizing all the steps. So I would write these down as we go. Okay, so what we do first of all is we put it in this order. Okay? There cannot be a number in front of there. If there is, well, when there is, there's something you do there, but we're not there yet. So you write it in that order. Next step is you take this number that's all by itself and move it to the other side. So x squared plus 5x, and you leave a blank there. And that x, when you add 2 there, you add 2 there. So it becomes a positive 2 when you move it to the other side. Alright, now what you do is you take this middle term right there, and you take half of it. So half of any number at all, write it as a fraction. If it's not, double the bottom and it becomes half. 5 over 2 is half of 5. If you have 3/4, half of that would be double that, 3/8. Okay, so it's real easy to take half of any number. So half of 5 over 1 is 5 over 2, and that'll always be, oops, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Once you take half of the number, then you square it. So that means 25, that means 4. And it will always be added. Okay, so half of this, 5 over 2, and then you square it. Top gets squared, the bottom gets squared, and it goes right there. So, whoops, that's a 4. How did that? No. Alright, but you can't just add 25 over 4 to one side unless you also do it to the other side. Okay? Alright, let's keep going. Next step, you make one parenthesis, you put a square on it, you put an X in it, take that sign and put it there. Nothing hard. You just do that every single time. Then you take the square root of this and put it right here. And notice it's either the square root of this or half of that, whichever. It's the same number. So half of 5 is 5 over 2. The square root of that is 5 over 2. Okay? And that equals 2 plus 25 over 4. Now we have to find the common denominator in order to add those up. So this needs to be a 4, so this is going to be an 8. 8 over 4 is the same as 2, right? So now we have x plus 5 over 2, the quantity squared, equals 33 over 4. Okay, that doesn't look too terrible. Now we take the square root of both sides. Remember, plus or minus. And this becomes x plus 5 halves equals plus or minus the square root of 33 over 4, or the square root of 33 over the square root of 4. And you know the square root of 4 is 2, so I can just take that off and just put a 2 there. Alright, now I subtract 5 halves from both sides. Doesn't that look beautiful? Okay, so this next part that we have to do, we've got the answer. We just need to write it in a way that makes it a little more simplified. So all we're going to do is, they both have a 2 in the denominator, so we're just going to put the 5 and the square root of 33 together all over 2. So my answer is negative 5 plus the square root of 33 over 2, and negative 5 minus the square root of 33 over 2. Those are my two answers. Okay? So I will finish this with another video, and we'll call it 10.1b.